Hi everyone, my name is Chris Skillern. I'm currently a student in Type West, the Letterform Archive's postgraduate certificate program in type design. I'm a citizen of the Cherokee Nation, living in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is on the Muskogee and Cherokee Nation reservations. I live here with my wife and my daughter. Today I'd like to talk a little bit about the Cherokee language, our writing system, the syllabary, and the syllabary's inventor, Sequoyah. So 2021 is actually the bicentennial of the Cherokee Syllabary. 200 years ago, Sequoyah formally introduced it to his people. There are lots of celebrations going on this year, lots of exhibits in the various museums in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, which is the capital of the Cherokee Nation. And I thought it would be a good time to share a little bit of history and share some of my thoughts as a Cherokee Nation citizen and a type designer. So first, Sianaga, Chris Dagodoa, Chichalagi. Let me preface this talk by saying I'm nowhere near fluent in Cherokee. I've taken language classes in recent years, but I'm light years away from being conversational. The last people in my family to speak the language fluently were my great-grandparents, but it wasn't passed down because of, colonialism. So my interest in the syllabary and the language in general is very personal. Let's start with a little bit of background about Cherokee people. So these were our original homelands in the area of what is today North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama. And this is where we lived for a long time until, under President Andrew Jackson, Congress passed the Indian Removal Act in 1830. And beginning in 1838, approximately 16,000 Cherokees were rounded up and forcibly removed more than 2,000 miles west to Indian Territory in what is now eastern Oklahoma. Up to 4,000 died because of sickness and harsh conditions, and here the Cherokee Nation reestablished its government. So Cherokee people had contact with colonists fairly early on, and our culture and traditions kind of started to erode because of all that. The language is one of the things that's been constant throughout our history, and it's endangered today. The language, like all native languages, was banned at different points. The U.S. tried to strip native people of their culture and language through forced assimilation and boarding schools. There are somewhere around 2,000 fluent Cherokee speakers today, and we've lost more than 30 to COVID alone. Our current principal chief, Chuck Hoskin Jr., is very dedicated to language preservation and revitalization. And this year, the nation broke ground on a new language center in Tahlequah, which will house all of its language programs, including the immersion school, the translation department, and things like that. I should also point out here, there are 3 federally recognized Cherokee tribes. There's the Cherokee Nation and the United Keetoowah Band, which are both in Tahlequah, and there's the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians in North Carolina. I'm speaking from a Cherokee Nation perspective because that's my nation, but all of us use the syllabary. So speaking of the syllabary, this is Sequoyah. He's the inventor of the Cherokee Syllabary. There's a little bit of a misconception that he was a chief or someone of importance in the tribe. You'll hear that often, but he was actually a blacksmith, a silversmith, an artist, and a statesman. He had almost certainly seen written language at some point because of proximity to settlers and trading with them and things like that. And accounts differ. He may have known some English too, but he refused to ever speak it. As the story goes, one day, Sequoyah overheard a group of young people talking in amazement about how white men could, quote, put talk on paper. He interjected and said, "You all are fools. Why, the thing is very easy. I can do it myself." And he picked up a flat stone and scratched on it with a pen, and after a few minutes, read to them a sentence that he had written by making a mark for each word. That was the end of the conversation, but it awakened almost an obsessive drive in Sequoyah to devise a system of written language for his own people. So he started work on it somewhere around 1809 and worked for a decade trying out different systems. He became a little bit of a hermit. People didn't really understand what he was trying to do. And in trying to find the best way to represent the Cherokee language, he first tried making a symbol for each word, for each sentence. Both of those proved unsuccessful. So to illustrate why this would be difficult, take this example. One word in Cherokee can be an entire sentence where each syllable holds meaning. And this is how you say goodbye in Cherokee. And you'll see here, just changing one sound changes its meaning. So at the top you have do da da go ha'i, which translates roughly to let us, two or more, meet each other again. And below that you have do na da go ha'i, which means let us, you and I, meet each other again. So you see just changing one syllable changes the entire meaning. And you can see why it would be difficult to make a symbol for each word or sentence for a language like this. So he tried a lot of different things. He tried sentences, words, pictographs, but eventually he broke down the sounds of the Cherokee language into 86 distinct syllables, and then he drew a symbol for each. And that's what we call a syllabary. His original designs actually looked like this, very intricate and calligraphic. These were the designs that Cherokee people learned originally. And once he had developed these designs, he started sharing them with neighbors and family members who were all able to learn quickly. But the tribe as a whole was suspicious. At one point, Sequoyah and his daughter, Ayoka, were charged with witchcraft and brought before their town chief for trial. The two were separated and made to write notes back and forth in the syllabary to prove its validity. The judges were convinced, and in 1821, Sequoyah formally introduced his invention. And within a year, 90% of Cherokee people could read and write the syllabary. It was the highest rate of literacy in Georgia at the time. In 1825, the Cherokee Nation formally adopted it as the official writing system. And here's a slide. These are Sequoyah's designs for numerals, which were never adopted, but I just think they look really cool. And it's neat to see. Okay, so next part of the story. This is where these guys come in. The guy on the left is Samuel Worcester. He was a missionary who lived for a long time with the Cherokee people. He was a staunch supporter of tribal sovereignty. He protested the tribe's removal to Indian Territory. And importantly, as a person with printing experience, he was instrumental in working with the tribe to establish a press. And in 1826, the Cherokee National Council voted to appropriate funds to build a printing office and purchase printing press and cast a set of Cherokee type. Worcester secured additional funding from his missionary organization and used his printing expertise to help with all the logistics of getting the type cast and things like that. This guy on the right is Elias Boudinot. He's a Cherokee man who was selected in 1828 by the General Council of the Cherokee Nation to be the editor of a newspaper that was to be printed. Hold on, I'm trying to find my slides here. Okay, so that same year, Boudinot worked with Worcester to print the Cherokee Phoenix. The Cherokee Phoenix was the first newspaper published by Native Americans in the United States, and it was the first published in a Native American language. So for a long time, it was printed in English and Cherokee side by side. This is kind of a rough scan to look at here, but you can see some Cherokee over here on the right side, and a little bit over here on the left too. The move to metal type presented some challenges because it would have been nearly impossible to cut Sequoyah's original intricate designs at such a small size. So Stories differ here, again, about who exactly played the biggest role in this transition, but I'll just give one version. So Sequoyah went about simplifying his designs, in some cases borrowing some forms from an English Bible that he came across at his brother-in-law's house, at least the ones that he thought bore enough resemblance to his original designs. And for the rest of the glyphs, he created new forms. Surprisingly, this didn't cause readers of Cherokee to be unable to read it, and this quickly became the standard form of Cherokee in both handwriting and print. Today, this is what people recognize as the syllabary, and I'll explain just a little bit about this here. On the left, you can see this chart over here is Samuel Worcester's arrangement of the syllables, and on the right, up at the very top, there's something really small you can see that is Sequoyah's preferred arrangement of the syllables, which they're a little bit different, but Worcester and others decided that for English-speaking people, this arrangement was the most intuitive. Not necessarily for Cherokee-speaking people, though. But it is a little easier to learn for English-speaking people this way. So if you look on the left, you see up at the top, we've got the vowels in that first row. It's A, E, I, O, U, And then down below that, in each line, you add a consonant to the beginning of those vowels. So right below it, you've got ga, ka, ge, gi, go, gu, ga. Sorry, I said that a little bit messed up. And then, ha, he, he, ho, hu, ha, la, le, li, lo, lu, la, and so on. So anyway, that's how the syllabary works, basically. Okay. Moving on. The Cherokee Phoenix operated until 1834, when its offices closed because of the Indian Removal Act. After removal, a new press was established, and in 1844, the Cherokee Advocate began publication. And I got to see an actual page of this in the Cherokee National Supreme Court Museum a few weeks ago, which was really cool to see. The Advocate ran for 62 years and was shut down twice during that run. It ceased publication in 1906 when the U.S. dismantled the Cherokee Nation government. All that remains are the press and some of the metal type, which I also got to see at the museum, which was really exciting to me. So there's the press on the left. It actually still had a plate on it, which I didn't take a picture of, but I should have. And then a type case right there that has some Cherokee type in it. I tried my best to get some close-up pictures through the little magnifier, and it was really difficult because they are so tiny. But this was super exciting for me to see. You can kind of make out a few of those there. So that was Cherokee type from 1875, a set that was used to print the Cherokee Advocate until 1906. And also in the museum there, they had a masthead from the Cherokee Advocate. And finally, here's a press plate with some Cherokee type on it. This may or may not have been from the same set that was used to print the Advocate, but this was also really cool to see and also really hard to get a picture of. And here are just a few other older examples of Cherokee syllabary printing from the Park Hill Mission Press around the 1840s. Okay, I'm going to go into show and tell mode for a minute here. I just want to give you a sense of kind of how important Sequoyah and the syllabary are to Cherokee people, just by giving you a look around Tahlequah, the Cherokee Nation capital. So this is one of the first things you see when you pull into Tahlequah. It's a statue of Sequoyah in front of the Cherokee Nation seal, and up at the top there you see some syllabary. It says basically Cherokee Mercantile, but this is one of the first things you see coming into town is the statue of Sequoyah. There's a lot of signage around town that has syllabary on it, in addition to English. This is the university in the town, which was at one time the Cherokee Women's Seminary. And they've got a syllabary on the bottom of their sign too. Here's some more signage. Here are a few slides showing the syllabary's adaptation to different technologies. So this is a Cherokee Syllabary IBM Selectric typewriter element. And here's a Hermes brand Cherokee typewriter keyboard. And then we get a little more into modern type design. There have not been a lot of modern Cherokee typefaces made. Apparently Herman Zapf designed one in the 70s, but I can't find any evidence of it aside from this sketch. So if anyone out there has anything, I would love to see it. No matter how much I look, I can't find it. This is something that I found completely by chance. This was apparently designed for VGC's phototypositor, and it's fascinating to me because I've never seen any other phototype era Cherokee type. This is obviously not a great design. Apologies to whoever designed it. I just happened across this randomly in a scan of an old issue of UNLC. And again, I can't find any evidence of this anywhere else. And if anyone has anything, I would also love to see that. But I just thought that was kind of cool. Kind of a missing link that I hadn't seen before. Okay, these are, in my opinion, the two best examples of digital Cherokee type. On the left is Plantagenet by Ross Mills. It's probably the most recognizable. It came with Windows for a while, and it's been used a lot. And on the right, there's Mark Jamra's Forius, which is really amazing to me. The quality of the drawing is just so nice, and Mark went out of his way to make this a full modern type family with a bold weight and even the first ever Cherokee italic. It's Forius is gaining some ground in the Cherokee Nation. It's used a lot in Tahlequah's museums and things like that. There's also Google Noto has Cherokee support. I forgot to put a slide in for that, but there's that too. What I'd like to see personally, and part of what I'm working on for my final project at Type West, is even more stylistic variety in syllabary fonts. I think there's a lot of room for expression and a need for typefaces that are tailored for different uses, like display faces, for example. Several years ago, a couple of Cherokee Nation artists who've been really instrumental in advancing the syllabary into new technologies, Joseph Erb and Roy Boney Jr., they surveyed the language community to find out which elements of the glyphs were essential to their legibility, and they came up with these basic forms. And I think this is really important for anyone who's designing Cherokee type to be aware of, because, for instance, a lot of the things that people who design Latin type might be tempted to view as serifs are actually important for legibility. So when I'm thinking about designing in different styles, particularly sans serif styles, I need to keep in mind that these are not serifs. They're important for the legibility of the design. And we need to think about different ways to incorporate them into the characters instead of treating them as serifs. Here are a few examples of sort of more expressive Cherokee lettering, and perhaps a glimpse of the possibilities for the design of the syllabary going forward. This is a mural by an amazing Cherokee artist named Kelly Gonzalez. It's in Art Alley in downtown Tulsa. Here's a little bit more of Kelly's work. She uses a lot of syllabary in her designs. I think it's really cool. And here's Roy Boney, who I talked about a minute ago. I mentioned a few times in this talk, actually. Roy is the manager of the Cherokee Nation language program. He's this incredible artist. He uses syllabary a ton in his work, and he has some really great expressive examples, I think. And finally, this is just some of my own Cherokee lettering and type work that I've done for personal projects over the last few years. As I said, I'm working on the syllabary as part of my final project for Type West too, but I can't share any of that yet because it's not in any kind of a state to share. But I'm excited about that, and I'm looking forward to working on more of this going forward. I want it to be a large part of what I do with my eventual practice, and I hope that it will be useful. So that's all I've got. Wado, thank you for listening. I'm Chris Skillern again. You can find me on Instagram at TulsyType. I look forward to taking any questions I can, and thank you so much.